Great. In order to better prioritize public comment, I would like to suggest to the board the following changes for the agenda this evening. I will call the meeting to order at the top, and we'll start with the payroll update from the superintendent. The board will then be able to ask any questions, and we will move into public comment immediately after. After public comment, we'll move into the workshop on the superintendent search and then continue the rest of the meeting as scripted. By show of hands from the board, including the student representatives, can I get approval for these changes? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. So I'd like to call this business meeting of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Tuesday, December 6th, 2022. We are meeting in a blended format with some of us here at Casco Bay High School and others on Zoom. Mr. Superintendent, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair. Ms. Bondo.
Présente.
Dr. Opperman.
Present.
Ms. Russell-Better.
Here.
Ms. Biliou.
Here.
Ms. Bryden.
Here.
Mr. Youssef.
Here.
Ms. Lentz.
Here.
Mr. Grant.
Here.
Ms. Ellis.
Here.
Ms. Francisco. Mr. Hemond.
Here.
Ms. Santiago. And Chair Figdor.
No longer chair, but I am here.
Sorry, not change that on my roll call.
Thank you. And now the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all. The Portland Public Schools recognizes the original inhabitants of the land on which our city and schools stand. The Wolastoq-Iig, or Maliseet, Micmac, Penobscot, and Passamaquoddy tribes, collectively known as the Wabanaki Confederacy, or People of the Dawnland. We are honored to have Wabanaki children among our students today, and as a district, we are committed to making the past, present, and future of Wabanaki peoples visible in our schools and classrooms. We're going to start tonight with a payroll update from the superintendent. Mr. Superintendent, I give it to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I do want to mention, Danny, I missed you in roll call, so I apologize, but you are present. Thank you. So tonight I want to provide an update on our payroll challenges and discuss the steps that we've taken and are taking to straighten out what is an unacceptable situation that's causing tremendous disruptions for our staff and damaging already frail morale across the organization. On any given payroll, we pay about 1,500 employees, and most of them get paid without major problems. I've previously outlined the types of situations that are consistently challenging for us. When staff are in more than a single position and those positions receive different compensation levels, when people change positions, when they receive stipends or other alternative forms of compensation, when they use vacation days or unpaid days. So for example, ed techs during a snow day or on the first 2 days of the school year that are not student days, or during the summer when they're not technically working. When employees have asked to have their school year pay averaged so that they do not experience pay interruptions during school vacations. When employees claim extra pay for additional work outside of their normal duties, things such as ed tech subbing for teachers, teachers covering for other teachers' duties in their absence, and so on, attending professional development, things along those lines. Temporary employees, such as our dedicated subs, our long-term subs that are covering for teachers on leave and things along those lines, and other extra pay such as stipends for cell phone use, compensation for attending training, and things along those lines. Also, over this fall, we've asked our payroll and HR departments to implement two major contracts that required significant moves involving compensation. Our PA contract included retroactive pay to the start of the school year for our approximate 800 teachers. Additionally, a number of lane changes that were actually negotiated subsequent to the approval of the contract and could not be implemented at the same time as the new pay rates and retroactive pay for teachers, which had happened back in October and the first November pay. Our EdTech contract, which was approved in late October, included new pay rates, retroactive pay for this year, and for those employees who were with us last year, a full year retroactive payment for that full year. Additionally, the contract increased the compensation for ed techs who serve as substitute teachers from $30 on top of their regular wages per day to $45 per day on top of their regular wage. And that's obviously half if they're only subbing half a day and so on. These changes are also retroactive to the start of the school year. So there are many people who were compensated at the previous rate, so at the 30 or I think it's 17 and a half for the half day. So folks who had been compensated at that previous rate now need to be amended for those dates that they served prior to the contract being ratified. They need to be amended to reflect the difference between those rates. I do need to point out that although our agreement did not specify when retroactive pay would be paid, we were committed to implementing this as soon as possible, and we were able to do so this week, with the exception of the implementation of the new substitute rates for ed tech subbing for teachers. I've been carefully logging all of the concerns raised by staff over the past couple of weeks. In total, we've logged over 140 cases and have solved a number of them, but not anywhere near that total number. The cases range from individuals who've not been paid at all to folks who are missing a couple of hours of PD pay. Some have questions about their benefit costs or how to access their records. There are a significant number of folks who wrote after Friday's pay about not having received their retro pay, which I expect most of them did by the end of the day on Friday. There are also a dozen or so folks who were affected by the re-implementation of our pay averaging, which we had not done for the last 3 payrolls. Yesterday, I pulled all of our HR, non-payroll finance, and other staff with system access and knowledge of HR procedures and assigned them all of these cases with the goal of getting all of them cleared this week ahead of running payroll next week. These are folks with full-time jobs, and so we ask your patience as some of their regular work slows down, but we need to maximize the number of knowledgeable folks with access to the systems to fix the problems, and this is our priority. Our staff can expect to hear from their assigned resource in the next 48 hours, and our goal, as I mentioned earlier, is to resolve each of these concerns by the end of this week, so ahead of next week's payroll run. Yesterday, school and department leaders were asked to log any known payroll discrepancy and send it to us by this morning, which they did. We're running these lists up against the list of current known cases to ensure that there's nothing left out there that we are not tracking. And I want to take a moment to thank our school leaders for their efforts yesterday to get all of these issues documented. Again, these are busy folks with full-time work, and I asked them to drop everything and focus on getting all of these concerns documented. I've also asked Assistant Superintendents Townsend and Nally, and Executive Director of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging, Barrett Wilkinson, as well as other key members of their leadership teams, to go out to every school this week to hear our people's concerns, document those concerns, and assure staff that all of our senior leadership is focused on solving these issues. I've also asked Barb Stoddard to convene one-on-one meetings with the high school and middle school co-curricular directors so that we can go through all of the co-curricular stipends and get them aligned to the records that we have, document what has and hasn't been paid, and resolve any existing discrepancies. Last week, we entered into an agreement with Spinglass, a consulting firm, to conduct a forensic analysis of our payroll systems and records. One deliverable from this work will be detailed documentation of every payroll transaction against what it should have been to allow us to reconcile all of our outlays. They started their work yesterday and are hopeful to be able to complete it by the end of December. Another related Spinglass deliverable is to review our processes and make recommendations on how we can improve them going forward. I'm happy to report that we arrived at a tentative agreement with the Portland Education Association and the Maine Education Association on a memorandum of understanding outlining our obligations to repair the harm that we've done with our failures to pay people on time. This MOU will cover all aspects of the issues I discussed earlier in my review, and we're working closely with our base, the union representing our secretaries, custodians, food service, and transportation workers. We're working with their leadership to ensure that we follow the same requirements in our response to their represented staff, and we will extend those same terms to all of our other staff. I want to apologize to our staff who are not receiving their pay consistently and regularly. As a leader of the school district, I feel a tremendous amount of guilt and shame at not being able to meet the most basic expectation as an employer, which is to pay people for the work they've done on time. As I deal with my emotions, I'm cognizant that everyone affected is dealing with their own different emotions and that they're also having to manage the impact of not receiving what they've earned, particularly knowing that this is happening at an important time of the year for many. At the same time, I want everyone to understand that our staff are working tirelessly to correct problems as we find them and are committed to continuing to resolve these problems and create long-term solutions so that they do not recur. That's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Thank you for all of your work, and I am so glad to hear about the MOU that's been reached. Now I'd like to open the floor to questions from the board. However, before I do, I just want to note that the board did have an executive session this last Friday about these ongoing issues and had the opportunity to ask many questions then. Because we would like to get to public comment as soon as possible. Board, I ask that you be brief in your questions if it's possible. Thank you. Now I'd like to take any questions, please, from the board. Yes, Board Member Bondo.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Superintendent, for your presentation. I just have three quick questions. Last time, I think when I asked how many of our staff being impacted, we didn't have a clear number. I heard that you've been logged to some of the numbers, but those are all the staff were impacted, or do we know right now how many of the staff, how many employees are being impacted?
I mentioned about 140 staff have come to me and we've logged their concerns. We, yesterday asked principals and department heads to log any additional folks that had concerns. We are now reconciling that list with the prior list. So I don't have a total number. And again, these are all the reported cases to date.
Okay. So do we have any idea, because of the challenge, how many employees are now calling, as not showing up or calling off for work because it's challenging? So Do we have any absentees or calling off because of those issues, or they are all coming to work?
I don't know that anybody is not coming to work as a result of that. I think we track our staff attendance, on a daily basis. And, we have a lot of illness in the district right now, as both students and staff, but I don't believe that staff are not showing up because of this.
Okay, so my last question about the communication strategies. So when I heard, order retroactive is a kind of little complex. So what kind of strategy do we have to better communicate to the staff so they understand exactly who those retroactive payment? Because when I see the emails that we've been receiving, a lot of they have about the averaging pay, some other line going up. So it's a lot of complexity on that. So what kind of communication we really have so that clear explanation, everybody has the clear explanation about what's going on and who we need to respond, who they need to send the email, and who's that person in charge to respond to them.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, a couple of things. So we just entered into this MOU.
Yes.
It's not finalized. It's not signed. We have it in principle. So there will be things to communicate coming from that MOU that we have not communicated at all yet. And we'll work with our CBU leaders to do that, in the next few days as this is all finalized. As I mentioned during my remarks, we've assigned all of the logged cases to a central office staff person who has sort of ownership for a group of issues. So, for example, all of our benefits questions, people who feel that they've been overcharged for their benefits, we're withdrawing money from their account, but it's not showing up in their 457 account or 403Bs and things along those lines are all assigned to one person who is managing all of the benefits issues. Our budget director, Miranda Fasulo, who did all of the retro pays and the pay averaging, is handling all of the questions from ed techs that have to do with, so we have individuals assigned, and as I mentioned in my remarks, the expectation is that everyone who is logged with one of those issues or any of the other issues that we've logged that are all sort of in these categories will either have been communicated with yesterday, today, or by the end of the day tomorrow.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
And we'll continue to, much of what I said today was also in an email that I sent out to all staff, late this afternoon.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Board Member Bondo. Yes, Board Member Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. First one comment, I want to commend the decision to send staff out to the school buildings. I think that helps address one key concern that I heard from board members, and that's that we are capturing all of the information from every staff possible. So I think that was a very welcome step to hear about. My question is about the list that you've been keeping of cleared cases, and I'd like a little bit further explanation about this. To me, a cleared case is one where the problem that has happened is resolved. I'd like to hear how that translates to fixing the underlying issue that created that person's problem in the first place, right? So we need to make people whole, but at the same time, do you think that whatever, happened to employee A, B, or C is now fixed so that won't happen in the next payroll cycle?
No. That's, I think, the challenge that we're facing is a lot of these we're fixing the individual situation, but the underlying issues that cause that situation to occur is not fixed. Every time we fix it manually, it reoccurs. So we're, and I didn't mention this in my report, but we've also contracted with Munis to have an embedded resource for the next 6 weeks. And ultimately, what we're trying to do in that period of time is to reboot, to restart, to reconfigure and run from scratch our payroll system set up the way that it should have been set up in the first place. And so, for a long time, we've been fixing individual things and not repairing the underlying problems. So we recognize that we're on a hamster wheel and we need to get off of it. And so we're working to do that, and that resource is there. But right now, many of these problems that we're having, things like, one that is a consistent problem for us is our dedicated our ed techs who are also have moved into a long-term substitute position, because those individuals have to stay in our system as ed techs because their benefits are tied into that to that contract. But for the time that they're working as long-term subs, they're receiving a different rate of pay than what they receive. We do not have a button that you can click that says this person stays here but also gets paid this. And so that's the kind of underlying work that we need to do so that we're not going in and saying, oh, for this person, the difference between what they would make and what they're supposed to make in this long-term sub position is X. And therefore we cut it, we add something into the system that gives them that difference. So those are examples of the kind of change.
Would it be safe to assume, though, that now that you've identified that and it's coming, you know how to fix it quicker for the next payroll cycle, meaning you know what that problem is and you know where to go to correct it?
You would think so, except that, to give you an example. So we tried to fix something like that. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, all of our principals and non-represented administrators reverted back to the pay that they got back in June of last year, and all of our new principals didn't get paid. So that's where making a tweak in the system, and so we need to really rebuild the system from scratch, run it parallel to the messed up system while we're trying to fix those things, and eventually be in a position to reboot that system new. So it's not as simple as
that. Then is the key to transitioning to an outsourced system down the road.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Board Member Bryden?
Thank you, Chair. I have a follow-up question to the part of the discussion about how there are a few central office people who are each assigned to a particular category of issues. I'm curious, if we have a staff person who's dealing with more than one type of problem, do they then have to work with two people from central office or not?
We've tried to identify what is the primary concern, and then we want those individuals that are assigned to that primary concern, whether it's a stipend issue or whether it's a pay averaging issue, to also follow up on if they don't have access to the EAS system or something along those lines.
Okay, great. Thank you. Of the cases that have been solved, and if you don't have an exact set of numbers, that's totally okay. But I'm curious, of the ones that have been solved, I'm wondering how many are overpayments, how many are underpayments, and how many are situations where the person was paid correctly but was confused about what they were seeing.
I don't have that information. I mean, I have a spreadsheet that has all the finalized, but I'd have to look at.
Okay. No, that makes sense. And then related to the potential, where I'm going is I'm wondering, I've seen several emails from staff people expressing that their pay stubs are really difficult to understand. So I'm wondering if, obviously this is a future looking, I'm wondering if part of the work that we're doing will set us up well to be able to provide pay stubs that are easier to understand.
That would be our hope.
Okay, super. Two more.
And let me say that, that is not a new problem.
Okay.
The way in which we labeled things is oftentimes incomprehensible. It's just a bunch of, initials and
Yeah.
numbers that don't necessarily mean anything.
Okay. Good area of opportunity. My last question is the wage inquiries email for the fund. Can you talk a little bit about where the money in that fund is coming from?
The wage inquiries.
Yeah.
It's coming from just from our general fund, and we've moved a certain amount into that account, and we'll replenish it as needed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Right, that's me. Board Member Russell Better, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the update today, Superintendent. I had a couple questions regarding some populations that I'm just wondering if we have any more information about, as we know that, we have the wonderful advocates of the PAE and EdTech Union, and I'm wondering about the base group that you mentioned, which just make sure I'm correct that that's custodial, transportation, and food service. Am I missing any?
Okay. Custodial maintenance. You're missing secretaries. And you're also
thank you.
missing our central office
Staff.
IT techs. So Greg, who is on, managing this session, is also a part, and he's actually a union steward.
Okay. So I'm just wondering, and I know you mentioned beginning conversations with that group, which is wonderful. I'm just wondering, do we have any information since, I would say, the folks that we have been hearing from largely, I think, are represented by the other unions. I'm wondering if you're getting any information about the level of impact for that group.
I'm working with Liz. Liz sends me a weekly list of people, and we've been working through that. We've had, the challenges this past week, and these are not represented staff, but our lunchroom aides. That's been a challenge that we had not experienced before. We continue to have problems with transportation where overtime and extra routes and things along those lines are challenging for us. Those all fall into the multiple ways in which we get extra time reported, and the timeliness and the way in which it gets into our systems is a problem.
So, Superintendent, are you saying the new part about the food service aides is that they're having new issues with pay?
We had a problem getting their timesheets for this past week.
Okay, so most very recently
Yes.
in this past pay period, there's a
so
new.
that was a priority yesterday, and my understanding is they all got paid yesterday.
Okay, and I guess my question with that is, do you feel that there is a clear, as I know has been developed from messages I've seen going out to different buildings, what is the process for staff to, share their particular issue? Do you feel like with that group of staff, there is a clear directive of how to pass along your
department heads for those departments?
Department heads, okay.
We're also a part of our conversation.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is about subs and wondering how those folks are directed to share issues with their pay as well. How does that work?
I mean, for the most part, subs that have not been paid have come, that I know of, have come to us. We have a significant number of people on the list that are subs that have not been paid for, a couple of days. Again, in all of those cases, it's issues of how their time is reported and how we take in what is reported. So that's where the challenge is.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Bellew.
Thanks, Sarah. I just have a couple questions. I'm wondering if you can tell me more about the process or how the process is going with the Munis technician.
So he's embedded, meaning that he's not working for anybody else. He had a couple of days that he needed to do with another customer that were previously committed, and they otherwise cleared his schedule. He is in our office working side by side with our payroll manager.
And do you know roughly what you're expecting him to do? You said reset the programming and then put the principles that were there before.
We ultimately, what he is helping us to do is to relaunch our payroll system. So basically rebuild it from a different set of specifications and hopefully correct fundamentally some of the issues that we're not. Let me give you an example. So pay averaging, as I mentioned, we were not able to do it for the past 3 weeks. We finally did it this last pay run, which caused problems because people didn't know about it. We had overpaid them prior and all of that kind of stuff. But that was a configuration in Munis that we had never set up. And so the first thing that he did was to help us to set it up where we can now associate an individual with pay averaging, and the system does the pay averaging. Prior to that, a staff member was individually calculating the pay averages and putting those into the system on every payroll. And so these are the things that fundamentally were not set up in our system in a way that would allow us to be as efficient and effective as we need to be. And when, we don't have the resources that know that that's what you need to do, then everything crumbles. And that's what we're looking at.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, is he sorry, this might be a random question, but is Gavin still on board with us, or is he no longer?
No, Dr. Goodall moved on about a month and a half ago.
Okay, thank you for that refreshment. I'm wondering, do you have an estimate of how long it's going to take him to rebuild this program?
We have him contracted for 6 weeks, and that's what we hope it will. We hope to be able to do that within that 6-week period. Started last week.
Okay, thank you. And I might have also missed this, but can you also update me on how you're getting in touch with folks that don't have access to email and would need interpretation to express their needs or express their payment issues?
So all of our staff have emails, with the exception of some of our new employees before they actually get set up in the system. And so we've gotten emails from new employees who are still using their personal email addresses. Most of our staff do not need interpretation, but if anybody does, they would, be able to access that through our multilingual, multicultural center. Or, and so to give you an example, I know that we have, one staff member who reached out and had a colleague at their school sort of help us to, help them to understand what was happening and get in touch with us with their concerns.
Okay, thank you. And just last question, I'm wondering, have you all been able to resource the city as a resource or as an option, since they also utilize Munis as well?
It's a different setup. Part of the challenge and part of the challenges that we have are the way in which the setup was originally done, which was not necessarily aligned to our system needs. So I have been in touch with interim city manager West about the need for us to do this reboot and working with them to do that in the way that it will, will not impact the operation of the city's systems. So we are in communication. And they've been super helpful with, on the day that our network went down, we used the city's payroll center to be able to do all of our setup. We then found we couldn't print from their site because of the, just the way that our printers are configured. They're very unique and they hold all of the keys within the actual printer. That's the way that Munis is set up. And so we had to come back, and we were fortunate that that actually happened as the system was, we learned that we couldn't print at the city at the same time that our network came back. So our folks came back from the city to PPS and were able to run payroll, but they, it was late. We didn't run it until after the 9 o'clock timeline where banks sweep up from these warrants. And so that was the day that checks arrived at people's bank accounts anywhere from noon, if it was a large national bank, to, 5 o'clock in the afternoon for other people. And that's just, I actually have learned more about this than I ever knew, but, I don't exactly know why that is.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Yes, Board Member Opperman.
Thank you, Chair. Superintendent, are there any programs that are going to be losing funds in order to compensate employees for their fines and other issues that have come from this?
It's too early for me to be able to answer that until we know what those fines look like. I think, everybody knows that we are tremendously understaffed this year. So that means that we have a lot of open positions. So I'm not super worried about it, but I don't know what our fines are going to be.
Thank you.
Board Member Youssef.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Superintendent. I have a quick question about, have we made any progress recruiting payroll specialists?
It's a tough question. I would say that no, we're net zero in terms of our staffing. We are relying on Robert Half temps to be able to run payroll right now. So,
thank you. If employee hasn't get their pay, are we able to write a check?
No, we don't have like a checkbook that we can write checks from. We need to verify them. We need to run them through the Munis system in order to be able to do that. For the wage inquiries, so where people have, late fees, overdrafts, interest charges, things along those lines. What we did, I think, Member Bryden asked about this, is we created a separate account that is administered by our attorney's office, and they have the ability to just write a check from that account, but we don't have that internally.
Okay.
I don't have like a big district checkbook. Although I will admit that I've fantasized about having that and just setting up a desk in the front and just writing people checks nonstop, because that would be a huge pleasure.
Thank you. For a spin class, is their job for now to collect information, or they are also participating solving the problem?
So it's twofold. The first and foremost part of their engagement is collecting the information that they need so that they can do what is called a forensic audit, which I don't really exactly know, other than it's obviously look back, through the system to see what, so they want to be able to say, this is what we should have paid. This is what you paid. Here's the difference. And that's their first and foremost deliverable. And then the second one is, in order to do that, they need to understand how we do things. And in the process, they will give us a report that includes, suggestions, recommendations around how to improve our processes.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Board Member Youssef. Board Member Victor, please.
Thank you so much, Chair Lentz. I like the sound of that. I just had a clarification. It was my understanding that when staff were bringing us problems that we understood were more global in nature, so that they affected more than that individual staff person, that we were intending, and I understand that that our current iteration of Munis is faulty, but my understanding was that we were making global changes to draw in similarly affected staff. Is that not the case?
When we can. So for example, pay averaging is an example of something that we fixed that affected a large number of staff. But when we've tried to do that in other cases, it's thrown something else off. So it's not as clear cut as, like, for example, we still do not have a solution for our ed techs who are working as long-term substitutes. So we're having to do that every time manually, and we don't have a system where we can keep people as a certain kind of employee and pay them, the difference without, throwing something off. So we don't have a global solution for that. We're working to create it. Now that we understand the problem, we can, the goal is to run it in the test environment, see if it works, and then implement it in the existing system.
And then for the spin glass forensic audit of our payroll, are you able to provide a timeline as to when we're expecting that work to be completed?
So the language in the memorandum of understanding says that it will be by the end of January, but with the goal being, the end of December. So if we can't do it by the end of December, they will explain why, and that will be a public, document shared with the signing parties and anyone else who wants it as a public record.
Thank you. And my last question is with the plans to contract with a payroll processor for a longer term solution. Has that moved forward at all?
We have a proposal and a letter of intent, which we will sign shortly, that will commit us to doing that within the next 30 days. But just the part that I think is important for people to understand is it's one thing to sign an agreement with, the vendor to run our payroll. And it's a very different thing for them to be the ones to get to the point where they're actually issuing the checks, that there has to be an entire system, transition and integration, which takes time. So just to put that in context, Munis took over a year to go from e-finance to Munis. We don't think that this is going to be that complex, but it is a system, an entire, system, migration and integration, and that takes time. So, they can't begin their work until the end of January because of their existing commitments. And when we start, our goal is to be in a place where we're running parallel systems at the end of the first quarter, so at the end of April. And then hopefully we'll be able to actually have them be the ones issuing checks as opposed to shadow issuing checks, at the beginning of the second quarter or the third quarter. So.
Thank you so much, Mr. Superintendent.
Are there any remaining questions? Yes, Board Member Bondo.
Okay, Mr. Superintendent, I just want to come back to with all due the respect, is something that is now really getting to my head is about the subs, about the ed tech who used to be a long time subs.
The other way around.
Okay.
The ed techs who are now working as a long-term substitute.
Okay. So when I heard is that we cannot figure out when they're gonna get paid. So
No.
I just want to make clear that I understand that.
It's not easy and we're not getting it right every time, but we are aware of who those people are and we are making sure that they get paid.
Mhm.
We do not have a easy way to do that. So it is consistently difficult for us to do it. And what I said is that we don't have a process built into our system
Okay.
that will allow us to do it consistently every time. So every time it's a manual fix.
Okay. So do we know how far those subs they did not receive the stipend? How far? So do we have a missing like a month, 2 months, or 3 months?
I think, there's people on this list. For the most part, we got them right this last time. It was
Mhm.
last minute. It was, letting them know that like we're working on it. We're going to try to get it, we're going to try to get it to run this time. So I think this time we got it paid, and, we now know what we need to do manually to be able to pay them, in each of our upcoming, and at the same time, trying to work on a longer term solution to that so that it's not just, manually picking up these 15 people and trying to figure,
Yeah.
getting them paid.
Right. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any remaining questions? All right. With that, we're going to move into public comment. I think because we have a lot of public comments, I just want to do a little bit of a reminder of the parameters of public comment. So it's open to anything that we are not voting on tonight. The board may not respond to any comments, so you'll be able to give your comments, but we will not be able to respond. If there are any members of the public that would like to address the board, you're going to be given 3 minutes to speak. In those 3 minutes, we can't do any complaints or allegations against staff or any person connected with the school district. To give public comment, you will come up to the podium, or if you're on Zoom, you'll raise your hand. If you have any issues with finding how to raise your hand, let us know and we can help you. We're going to alternate batches of people in person and then people on Zoom. I'm going to keep the time, and when you've reached 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I'm going to raise this yellow folder so you know that you have 30 seconds left. At 3 minutes, I'm going to raise a red folder so you can wrap up your comments. And I thank Board Member Bryden for that suggestion. At the end of your allotted time, if you would like to request more time, you may do so. And finally, I appreciate your grace as I manage this process for the first time. So thank you in advance. So now if you'd like to speak, you can come right up to the podium. And I think Carrie and Jen. And one thing I didn't mention is just that when you come up to the podium, if you can please introduce yourself by name and address. Carrie, go ahead.
Yes, Carrie Dowdy, Portland Education Association, 27 Fleetwood Street, Portland. In the Portland Public Schools, we talk a lot about collaboration and problem solving. I believe in collaboration and problem solving and try to live in that mindset every day. In my new job as the president of the Portland Education Association, I work collaboratively with the district on in all kinds of capacities on behalf of the membership. I ran for this position because I wanted to do something, not be someone. The members of the Portland Education Association are extraordinary and dedicated educational professionals devoted to students and their families, constantly striving for how to make things better and always working to create the schools that our students deserve. I started this job on July 1st. The last week in September, I put my name on a payroll promise with the district to the membership. And shortly before, those working under the educator contract were expecting a salary adjustment. That promise was rolled back. At the time, I learned 2 things: to think long and hard before putting my name on a payroll promise, and 2, that the district could not meet that promise, not because they did not want to, but because the payroll system was so intrinsically messed up, so broken that they literally couldn't do it. Payroll is not board policy or educational philosophy. It's not about having hard conversations. It's not about aligning with political platforms or taking a different viewpoint. It's not about best practice or curriculum. Payroll is the most elemental promise made to an employee by their employer, that the district will pay its employees what has been negotiated and agreed upon in the time that it is due. While wages are set and updated from different collective bargaining agreements, it is the district's job to ensure that their employees get paid on time as promised. This has not happened for the past 5 pay periods at the very, very least. I will not go into any great detail on the specifics of the errors in terms of the emails coming to the PEA. Those are not my stories to tell. At its worst, members reached out to Jen Cooper and I with needs for immediate financial help to pay their rent or to buy food for their children. And we were informed of staff at different schools taking up collections for beloved colleagues who had not been paid to help them get through another day. What has grown out of this payroll crisis over time is an even larger crisis of faith. Before closing, I'd like to shout out to some of the heroes of this story. To the MEA for showing up with strong advocacy, additional counsel, and an experienced labor attorney to take our case. Special thanks to Grace Levitt, the president of the MEA, and to Rochelle Bristol, the executive director. Together with the MEA, the PEA has reached an agreement with the district this evening. The PEA and MEA were able to initiate the negotiation of a third-party audit to accurately identify past and current errors, to move folks to where they should be under their collective bargaining agreements, and have the district's commitment to deadlines to ensure when that audit will be completed. I'd like to shout out to those at central office who have been working behind the scenes against tremendous odds to write the payroll system, to local and state labor leaders who reached out and offered help and advocacy. I now know more about Maine wage and hour laws at this point than I ever thought possible. And finally, I would actually, and this is sincere, like to offer some thanks to the district. When I took this job, there was a lingering loss of faith and leadership among the employees after the darkest days of COVID, that as employees of the Portland Public Schools, their voices did not matter. It was clear to me from the beginning that the PEA needed to build trust and belief within the association, to grow a feeling of belonging and collegiality. I wanted the members of the Portland Education Association to see that the voice of the collective does have impact, and to believe in the power of the union, our union. This payroll crisis has been a unifier. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire.
Good evening, Jen Cooper, EdTech, following your lead, EdTech Union President. So I would just like to say good evening to everyone. As many of you are hearing tonight, the impact of the payroll debacle has caused undue hardship for the EdTechs of this district. A lack of pay at any time of year is really difficult. However, during this time of year, it can be overwhelming. With the rise of cost of goods and services and the holiday season upon us, the stress caused to the already stressed group of employees is too much. 8 weeks ago, I stood before you, grateful to finally be able to sign a new contract with the district. Staff were excited to finally have a resolution to the 58 weeks of uncertainty that we had faced without a contract. People were patient as payroll settled teachers' contract and wage increased, excitingly anticipating that they would then move on to the EdTech increases. Yet, here we still are, sitting in the stress of the payroll mess. In teaching, we often talk about the lessons taught and the lessons learned. The payroll catastrophe has many lessons that could and should be learned from. When 3 members of the payroll department left, it was an opportunity for the district to ask why, what needed to change, and how could issues be fixed. As the district reported, much of the payroll rested on the shoulders of one long-term employee. And when that employee needed to be out on leave, payroll shut down. I hope the lesson learned was that one person cannot hold the keys when you have 1,500 employees in your care. As pay went out to EdTechs and much of it was wrong or missing the correct amount, the lesson learned should be communication. When people know and understand what's happening to them, they are much more patient and forgiving. Still, as I stand in front of you now, there are many EdTechs that still do not have the full amount of pay. As retro pay slowly began to be deposited in staff's accounts last Friday, some, but not all, transparency is a lesson learned. Many staff did not understand the new reporting of pay averaging on their check. and why the amount looks so different than their actual step rate. Had the district been transparent on the new procedure for pay averaging, people would be prepared. Also, many did not know that they would not be receiving a retro check due to the mistakes made in the previous 3 cycles. The lesson learned here again is communication. Once communication went out to staff for them to understand the new format and pay averaging, many nerves were calmed. There are many lessons that can be learned from this payroll crisis, lessons that can be used to help to rebuild the trust that has been broken between the district and its employees.
Thank you. I'd like to move to Jake B on Zoom now. And if there's anyone in the room that would like to approach the podium while we're listening to Jake, that would be great.
Hi, I'm an ed tech, Jake Boley, ed tech at Deering High School. I'll just be brief. My understanding is that the payroll department is that many people resign from the payroll department, and I feel like we have not really understood the reason why that happened. Why there are no experienced employees there, and I feel like we have not gotten a strong explanation for that. So rumors abound and things like that, and I think that as ed techs and teachers and everyone else, we're owed some explanation for what's going on in the administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Go ahead.
Tom DeYoung, Functional Life Skills Ed Tech at Deering High School. First off, I would like to thank you, Superintendent Batana, for essentially taking ownership of this issue and these issues. I'm here to speak about some of the impacts of many payroll issues experienced by myself, and I expect many others throughout the districts. I have wasted countless hours trying to track whether I've been paid or not, or paid correctly. The undue stress caused by the payroll mistakes, shortages of pay, delays in pay owed going back to last school year, underpayment, overpayment, undistributed sick time, and lack of documentation are all issues faced by staff. I received pay distribution from the district on Friday. However, there was no documentation in the Employee Access Center to explain what the money is for. I assumed based on the email earlier in the day, it was the retroactive pay. But again, no information in the Munis Payroll Information Center to explain the distribution. That information is still not there. So yesterday I received an email requesting information about any pay issues. I submitted my information. However, I don't know if what I submitted is accurate because I don't have the information in the Munis system as to whether my distribution on Friday was correct or not. I have to go through every pay stub from last year and this year and calculate the number of hours, multiply it by the time, et cetera, et cetera. A new year is coming. Tax season is coming. Anyone who has worked here in this district for an extended number of years knows to wait to file your taxes because there has been an annual reissuing or an addendum to our W-2s because of errors. So, forewarning, I do not hold the payroll department responsible for all this. I put the responsibility on the administration, and I appreciate your acceptance. Undervaluing, understaffing, and underpaying the boots on the ground staff and payroll, ed techs and bus drivers, teachers, kitchen staff, custodians, etc. This is not a COVID issue. These were issues before COVID. The district wonders why staff don't make referrals to friends, etc., to work here, even though there is a significant bonus for that. The question questionable intentions of many decisions and actions,
Yes.
almost done, and actions are why. Administration keeps saying ed techs are getting a 5% pay increase. However, it is a 2% pay increase. And there are many staff that are not on, don't get a pay, that 3% step increase. So it is a 2% cost of living increase. CMP just announced 49% increase. Okay. It's only a 2% pay increase. Okay. I respectfully request you stop saying that it's a 5% increase, because it's not for everyone. So in close, misdirection and questionable intentions sum up this debacle. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to do one more in person, and then we'll go to a Zoom for Maya Lena. Go ahead.
Hi there. My name is Brian Dodge. I've been teaching in the district for 10 years. I'm a math teacher at Portland High and a union rep for Portland High. I want to start by saying I'm here against my wife's advice. She does not want me to be here because she genuinely worries about my health, physical and mental. I don't need to tell you about the stress that I've been under as a teacher for the last few years. I do need to tell you about the last 2 months of payroll disaster has compounded that stress to the point where she's worried that I'll have a heart attack. Since payroll has gone sideways, I've been sworn at and yelled at by staff who are upset at you all for, at best, incorrect pay, and at worst, no pay, and receiving no follow-up from the district about their issues. Today, I received this email. Hello, unfortunately, I won't be able to attend the meeting tonight because I will be working at my other job. If I could have made it, I would 1000% be there. I think it's really important to show up in numbers. I'm not sure what school board meetings are like, but if there is an opportunity for anyone who's present to say something on my behalf, that would mean a lot to me. I don't have too much to say beyond how incredibly frustrating and demoralizing this situation is. I'm a first-year teacher, and I took this job with no prior classroom experience. All the teachers in my life told me how hard that would be, and I was prepared for this work to be extremely challenging. I feel like I haven't even been able to engage with those challenges because the time I need to spend doing my job is increasingly taken up by phone calls, writing emails, and waiting in central office lobby trying to find out why I haven't received a paycheck. This is not a problem. These are my words. This is not a problem I created, and I can't solve it. Some of you have said to me directly that paying your staff is a basic function of the district and essential to making it work. I implore you to act like it. Stop everything you are doing until this is fixed. I've heard Javier's weak excuses and missed promises. That has only served to undermine any confidence I have in what he says. You could be the heroes here and make this better. But as it stands, you run the risk of tarnishing your legacy and ruining everything you've worked for. In closing, I implore you, I beg you, to either fix it immediately or get out of the way so someone more capable can come in and do it for you.
Thank you. Maya Lena.
Hi, my name is Maya Lena. I live on Essex Street in Portland. I'm a Portland Public Schools parent, and I recently started substitute teaching per diem. I am a Maine State certified educator, K-12. I've just been out of the classroom, staying home with my kids the last few years, but I recently started taking jobs at Rowe Elementary at the end of October, and I have not received any payment from the school department since I started. I reached out to the person who onboarded me. She connected me with the payroll staff, and I heard nothing from payroll. I understand that the department is ill-staffed at the moment. I then reached out directly to Superintendent Botana. He told me last Monday that I would be paid by last Friday. I received no payment on Friday. I was told that I would receive a check in the mail by Monday. I didn't receive a check in the mail on Monday, and I did not receive a check in the mail today. My greatest concern is less for my own sake. I mean, obviously I should be paid for the days that I'm subbing. My family does not rely on my subbing income. We've been going on one salary for the last 6 years or so, but it's not worth my time or my family's time for me to be spending days in the school substitute teaching if I'm not going to be compensated. Furthermore, I'm aware that the city is in dire need of subs. And for subs to not get paid they're not going to take the jobs, and the schools are going to be understaffed. And that's just a huge concern for me with having my child in the Portland Public Schools. So I think it's really important that people are aware that substitutes are not getting paid. It's not just the ed techs and the bus drivers and everyone else that's not getting paid. Substitutes are also not getting paid, and we are not represented by any union. So thank you.
Thank you. And just one quick note, and I think it's unfortunate that I have to say this, but during public comment, the rules say that we are not allowed to clap after people make a comment. It's unfortunate because I think giving support to your colleagues is really important in this moment. So I'm going to say that is the rules. And it will help us move through these comments. Go ahead.
My name is Zachary Gio, and I'm a building substitute at Lyman Moore. So I'm just going to tell my story, basically similar to Maya. I did not get paid for 2 pay periods in a row. 11/18, I looked at my check, and I'm also a coach. I coached cross country. I was short $1,000 on my coaching stipend and got no money for the hours I actually worked. I emailed 2 people. I'm not going to just call people out, but I emailed 2 people, and they reassured me that I would get that money on my next paycheck, which was last Friday. I go to school. I look at my laptop, check, see if I got paid. And I was paid just a random $250. Like, I was owed like $3,800, $1,000 for my coaching stipend, 16 days of pay, excuse me, for substituting. And I got $250 random. I left the building, left work that day, and I went to the central office. At first, I was told that they had mailed a check out to me and it will be there by the end of the day or Monday. And I said I would like to get a check now. That's what all my colleagues told me, was to not leave till I got a check. And then they printed off a sheet of paper and my payroll showing me what I was paid. It was incorrect. I told them it was incorrect. And then they kind of went back and forth for a second. They're like, oh, no, see, it's all good right here. And then I pointed out it was incorrect. And they were like, oh, you're right. That's our mistake. We'll fix that. We'll get it all correct. And then I was like, I'd like you to check by the end of the day. I was told that I could either wait there for hours and maybe not get my check, or I could leave and they would call me at the end of the day, regardless if it was ready that day or if I'd have to wait till Monday. I did not receive a call. And then randomly that night, I got a direct deposit for some of what I was owed, still not all of what I was owed. I'm still currently owed for 7 days of pay, like $1,200, around that amount. I'm just hurt, honestly. I love my job. I'm a building sub. I think it was funny when I was there talking to the secretary, trying to get the situation figured out. There was a gentleman there who was like a substitute teacher hiring day or fair, something of the sorts. And he was listening to me and all my complaints. And he asked me, he's like, is this a good job? I'm like, when I get paid, absolutely. I just don't have any trust or faith that I'm going to be paid correctly next time, because I'm still owed $1,200. Am I going to have to wait till next Friday to get this? Like, sincerely, we need substitutes. You need ed techs, and we're not getting treated right. And I don't appreciate it.
Thank you, Zachary.
Hi, my name is Erica Lee Winship. I live at 26 Fall Lane in Portland. I teach social studies in the district, and I'm a Portland Public Schools parent. First, I come here tonight to share my extreme concern and disappointment with the current payroll debacle. My story, I'm sure, is similar to that of many other employees. After initially being shorted pay for my role as a high school cluster coordinator, I've currently been overpaid by $823.49. It's just simply unacceptable to this taxpayer that as an organization with a $133 million budget, that we can't get payroll correct over multiple pay periods. However, I believe the real underlying issue here is a long-standing pattern of mismanagement, disrespect for complex systems and procedures that ensure smooth day-to-day operations, and rushed decision-making which purposefully excludes important stakeholders in the Portland Public Schools. I've consistently witnessed complete disregard for competency and experience in this organization over the past several years. Ideology and perceived policy improvements consistently trump rational and reasonable decision-making in the Portland Public Schools. On more than one occasion, my colleagues or I have been told to stop worrying about the nitty-gritty. You worry about too many details. Well, guess what? Everything we do is the nitty-gritty, and the devil is in the details. Teachers and other boots-on-the-ground employees are the ones who should be informing your decision-making. Yet, you rarely ask our opinions. The hubris displayed on a regular basis by some board members and district leadership is truly disheartening. While I could go on for hours about the messes that have been made recently, let me just mention a few areas where rushed decision-making and a we know better mentality have created uncertainty and frustration for families and employees in Portland. The elimination of the high school attendance policy and the removal of the SROs, a discipline policy which leaves schools with few and effective tools for managing student behavior, and the revamping of the entire high school choice process come to mind, but the list really goes on and on. Furthermore, it's not just payroll that is in disarray. My personal experience has been that there are also significant system failures in purchasing, transportation, special education, HR, and building level management at some of our schools. Getting the house in order needs to be the top priority of this board and district leadership. And while I agree that there are a lot of improvements we must make in the Portland Public Schools to fulfill the Portland Promise, that work can only happen after you ensure that all schools and systems are on solid footing. So please put a halt on the grandiose initiatives like changing school start and end times again, or consolidating Portland Engineering High School, and get to work securing the foundation of this institution. From where I sit, the house of cards is about to fall, and if you aren't paying attention to what we're trying to tell you, the children of Portland will pay the price for many years to come.
Thank you, Erica. We're going to go to Cal on Zoom now.
Hi, my name is Kathleen, and I'm an ELL teacher, and I'm working out of the Multilingual Center this year. I'm very concerned that some people's retirement accounts are being changed without employees' permission. That's also happening to me, and I feel very violated that someone is changing something that I signed off on. I'm concerned that money deducted from some employees' pay is not going into their specified accounts, for example, in a 403B or a 457. That money is missing, and where is it? I hope it's a priority of the district to find that missing money and return it to the staff members. Thank you.
Thank you, Cal. Come up.
My name is Beth Romano Arsenault. I teach at Portland High School, and I am the now former chief negotiator and the person who the chief negotiator for this current contract. I am here to express my grave concerns about the state of affairs in this district. The payroll issues have consumed the spotlight right now, as they should, but they are hardly an isolated case of dysfunction and mismanagement. Rather, they are a byproduct of it. Having worked my entire career of more than 30 years in this district and being the child of a career educator who retired from this district, I've been privy to over 50 years of observation and experience. Given this perspective, this feels like the lowest of low points, and there have been more than a few very controversial and challenging times in the past 5 decades. However, the main characteristic that I feel that sets this particular last few years apart is the very obvious and corrosive presence of a hierarchy that clearly and intentionally delineates who matters and who does not. This hierarchy is pervasive and damaging. In a district that prides itself on breaking down barriers and dismantling systemic oppression, I implore you to look in the mirror. Hierarchies are the foundation for supremacy, and supremacy is built on the premise that some are superior to others in authority, status, and power. By creating and functioning within a hierarchy, which you most definitely are, you are not dismantling oppressive systems, you're actually creating them. While I work in my classroom to explore and ensure representation within my curriculum, expose and eradicate grading practices that perpetuate inequity, and ensure that my students know they matter, I cannot say that the district is doing the same thing, at least in practice. In rhetoric, there are great strides being made, but those words are hollow and meaningless when the actions and outcomes do not back them, and they most definitely do not. On several occasions over the past 3 to 4 years, major changes have been made to the student experience by a board who has never once asked the students, their families, or the staff, the actual stakeholders, what they want, need, or think about the policies and procedures that you instituted or have made changes to. And I've yet to see a feedback loop either. And please recognize that public comment at board meetings, particularly when orchestration is apparent, is not the most credible solicitation of valuable input to inform policymaking, especially when you ignore the opinions to which you do not personally ascribe. Some examples of this top-down and exclusive decision-making include, but are not limited to, students and families having their school start and end times changed, students given no voice or agency in the removal of school resource officers and how that could and should look, returning to their buildings to find key people missing with no explanation, and now they, or at least some, will lose their school choice while 2 of the largest schools in the district will be aligned against the wishes of the majority, while underlying issues continue to go unaddressed. The assumption can only be that our opinions do not matter as much, or frankly at all, as those of the individuals on the board and administration. Therein lies the hierarchy, and therefore the supremacy. We are to be seen and not heard because you all know better. I will remind you that you do not know what you do not know, and you never will when you fail to ask the questions. And if you are failing to ask certain questions because you know what the answers will be and you don't like them, again, I ask you to reflect on why you're sitting in those seats. Remind yourself of who you are serving. You serve the students and families of Portland and not a political ideology or group. The sooner this is realized, the sooner the students and families of Portland can get the education they so deserve.
Thank you, Beth.
My name is Christine Braceras, and I live at 35 St. Lawrence Street. I've been teaching at Portland High for over 3 decades, and I have 2 children that graduated from Portland High. While I still really love working with kids and teaching at Portland, I'm deeply worried about the direction in which this district is headed. The mismanagement of our payroll is inexcusable, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are fault lines running deeply through the school district due to incompetence and arrogance from district leadership that extend beyond everyday operations to academic policies. Many of us are seeing students less and less prepared when they come to high school. The erosion of standards predates COVID, which only served to exacerbate the problem. What is going on? K through 12 teachers are working harder than ever. Our tax dollars are being spent, but not where they make a difference. While it is imperative that we address the social and emotional issues with our students, it is our duty to provide every student access to high-quality academics. To achieve this, we need the board and central office to stop forcing their top-down initiatives and start listening to staff who are the experts and actually work directly with kids. Central office keeps adding positions while we fight to keep the staff we have. We desperately need to retain our new hires, but the mismanagement of the payroll and unrealistic demands placed upon teachers and administrators will only serve to drive talented younger staff out. New teachers can't even access their Munis account to see if their paycheck is correct. They were told they could access the system by late October, but they still can't get in. The board and central office assume they're the experts on most issues without asking us for any input. Many board decisions, like eliminating the SROs and school choice, have been lacking in transparency and process. There is more of a concern about the optics of equity rather than in real solutions. This is a board driven by political agendas rather than what is best for kids. I'm generally an optimistic person, but until you start listening to us, the people who are with kids all day long, the district will continue in its downward spiral.
Thank you, Christina.
Hi, my name is Jessie Muldoon. I teach at Deering High School. I'm also a member of the PEA Executive Board. I live at 1917 Washington Avenue. I'm also a parent of a recent Casco Bay High School graduate. I've taught special ed I've been a credentialed teacher, certificated teacher for about 24 years. I was also a paraprofessional and a one-on-one for about 4 years. In addition to that, in Oakland, California, and now in Portland for my 7th year. I do have some payroll problems. Comparatively, they're maybe not as bad as many others. I have a stipended position, which I have not yet been paid for. But I do realize that that is not as egregious an issue as that many other people are facing. For myself, I love schools. I've always either been at school or have worked in schools pretty much my entire life. I love the institution of public education. I understand and appreciate the obstacles and challenges that we deal with. I love that we provide academic learning as well as social emotional learning. I appreciate and love that schools are intersections for families, community members, and educators. Working in public schools isn't easy. Nobody expects it to be. No educator gets up in the morning and expects an easy day. And it's often not safe. We live in a context of school shootings. We are still living in the context of a pandemic. And the stress is becoming untenable and our workloads are becoming untenable. And I think it's, reflected in the staffing shortages that schools are seeing around the country. We deal with a lot. And as many people have said, the last thing we should have to deal with is the most basic and fundamental piece of our job, which is to get paid on time and in full and accurately. And the fact that we haven't been is it's demoralizing and destabilizing. And I want to say with all due respect to the comment from earlier about from Superintendent Botana to be patient with our site administrators because they're supporting us through this, that they're busy people with full-time jobs. So are we, and we're the ones who are not getting paid accurately, and we're the ones that are not getting paid in full and on time. I've been sitting with coworkers going through their pay stubs, just thinking, like, literally speechless, like overpayments, underpayments, random payments, payments of payments in the checks in the mail. I want people to understand how egregious it is that EdTechs received a lump sum, an unitemized lump sum for retroactive pay. That should never have happened. And I really hope that it's not up to individual EdTechs to go back through their paychecks to figure out if they're getting paid correctly. That's absolutely not their job. The last thing I'm going to say is that I am not a silver lining person generally, but the silver lining that I do see here is the amount of unity and solidarity that we now have amongst our colleagues and amongst all of our unions and all of our staff, represented and unrepresented. And I hope that that is continued.
Thank you, Jessie.
My name is Eileen DuPont. I live at 133 Deepwood Drive. I am a high school math teacher for Portland Public Schools. Under the leadership of Superintendent Botana, payroll operations have been ignored to the point of complete breakdown. This school board, under the leadership of ex-board chair Figdor, was derelict in its duty to oversee district operations. Payroll problems are nothing new with this current regime. They are finally getting the attention that they're getting because the level of egregiousness has become outrageous. And it's only getting this much attention because of our strong PEA union leadership. This fiasco is just one of many organizational and academic issues that suffer from flawed leadership. And the way it's being handled is just as bad as the problem itself. We have a superintendent that won't answer to the community and a former school board chair that gaslights us with half-truths. It is now embarrassing to work for this district on top of being exhausting. The dedicated educators that you see here have lessons to plan and student feedback to give. And what are they doing on their own non-contractional time? They're trying to figure out if they were paid correctly. They're communicating their findings over and over again as the inaccuracies pile up with every paycheck. It is exhausting and it's demoralizing. Staff and community have lost trust, confidence, and faith in district and school board leadership. The only hope for restoring that is for Superintendent Botana and Board Representative Figdor to resign immediately. Do we really want to go down the path of no confidence votes and recall petitions? I implore them both to do the right thing for our community, staff, students, and families, and resign.
Good evening. My name is Taryn Southard. I am a teacher at Talbot Elementary School. I am a PEA exec board member. I am a building rep at my school. And I'm here representing many people who could not be here tonight. I have been working, just as Jessie said, with many, many, many colleagues to understand what in the heck is going on. There are people who have not been paid at all. There was someone at my building, a building rep, who had not received pay prior to Thanksgiving. She was promised a paycheck on Friday before Thanksgiving, and by Wednesday, there was nothing. And someone said, "You're just going to have to wait until Monday and we'll send it in the mail." And she said, "No, I cannot wait. I don't have food to feed my family." These are people who are working for peanuts. We don't pay our ed techs enough as it is. And now they're not getting pay. And all the people before us who spoke about how we already have staffing shortages, why in the world would anyone want to come here? Why in the world would anyone want to be a sub if they're not going to get paid? And I love my job. I love my students. I choose to work in Portland Public Schools. I want to be here. I love the diversity in our schools. I love that no day is the same as the day before. I'm constantly challenging myself and learning new things and being better for my students. But not everybody has the luxury of being here because they want to be. I'm very thankful. My husband also works full time, and we do not rely on my salary. Because if we did, this would not work for me. And here's the other thing. I look at my paycheck and I'm really thankful I have not had major discrepancies in my pay. I am missing payment from things I did over the summer. I'm missing payment for different committees and things that I'm on, stipends that I should be getting. However, there are lots of people who can't afford that, who can't afford just to not be paid. And, you know, I also don't have to sit and wonder if I'm going to be able to make my next paycheck, my next bills, excuse me. However, I can tell you, I look at my pay stub and I have no idea what's going on. I don't know if I've been paid correctly. I couldn't tell you. So honestly, you know, the request to have staff tell you if there's discrepancies in our pay could not tell you. I look at my paycheck and sometimes there's extra money flown in there. I don't know why. I couldn't tell you. So I do not have confidence that I have been paid correctly. And thankfully, that's not the end of the world for me. But I know that there are lots of staff members. It is the end of the world for them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michelle Lawless. I work at Portland High School and I live on Woodford Street. I'm here tonight to offer the observation that we are where we are due to a continued disregard for the employees in our district who hold institutional knowledge, have extensive insight, and bring a wide array of experience to their work. This disregard has resulted in the loss of longtime employees over the last 5 years and has never been treated as the crisis that it is, contributing to the wholesale crash of functioning systems like we have with payroll. In order to stem any further loss, I would encourage leadership to start by being much more mindful in their communication with staff who already feel demoralized, disposable, and harmed. While it is true that payroll for a large organization is complex, there are very few anomalies and even fewer surprises. To characterize any obstacles to accurate and timely pay as somehow the purview of employees is tone deaf at best. Payroll averaging for hourly employees became the law in Maine over 4 years ago, and it is routine throughout the state. Ed techs have been spreading out their limited vacation time to cover unpaid school vacations for the 17 years I have been in this district. Ed techs have also been supplementing their meager wages with subbing, tutoring, and coaching for just as long. In that time, payroll has been able to pay differentials categorize and pay the same employee at several rates, and most notably, the district has been able to implement previous contracts in all their varied complexities. I would also remind the board and district leadership that the vast majority of ed techs and other hourly workers must work several jobs in order to meet their financial obligations. And categorizing only some of their earned wages as primary, while calling the rest secondary, is elitist and it is dismissive of their financial reality. Finally, to everybody sitting at that table, following along on Facebook, or commenting on the news articles, when you assert that this is a non-story, not a big deal, a non-issue, that is the very definition of gaslighting, and shame on you. And finally, I too am concerned with the amount of politicizing in this district. And if you are a leader who was offered help to get us our pay and you rejected it, you should resign. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Good evening. My name is Jane Sawtell. I live at 339 Ludlow Street. I'm in my 8th year of teaching at Portland High School, and I was at Hall School, now Rowe School, for over 20 years prior to that. I've been thinking about what I wanted to say tonight, should I get the chance to speak, and there were a lot of directions I could go. But what sticks most in my mind is some of the work experiences I had prior to being an educator. For a while, I was in charge of the books at a very small media company here in town. And prior to that, I was the head teller in a bank on Monument Square. I know what it is to balance the books, and I know what it means to cut payroll checks, and I know the absolute horror of watching a colleague put a few pennies into their change drawer when they don't prove at night, knowing that it's going to create hours of extra work for me on a Friday afternoon when I have to make everything balance. The work experience that is most like this payroll situation, however, is the period in which I worked nights for a woolen mill in rural Maine. There were all sorts of rumors circulating about how our division was going to be shut down and all the workers laid off. Several of us asked the supervisors if this was true, and we were constantly reassured that rumors are not to be believed and there was no need to look for other work or ask for a transfer to a different division. And I believed them until we all got pink slipped and we're all looking for work at the same time in a bad economy. It is now frustrating enough to know that payroll hasn't been right in months or possibly years. It's bad enough to find out that some of my colleagues haven't been paid or have been under or overpaid for a long time. It's bad enough to know that my paycheck is also inaccurate and that I'm going to have a really tough time of it when it comes to doing my taxes. But the worst thing is that I no longer trust anything that this administration says when it comes to the schools. If the dictionary's word of the year and one of the big words of the night is gaslighting, this fits right in. We can see the errors ourselves. But then you open the Portland Press Herald website and read that everything's been fixed. It's truly disheartening. Or we've been getting email after email with the partial truth and obfuscation, excuses, procrastination evident in every single paragraph simply, and it's probably permanently, it has eroded my faith in the management of this organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Good evening. My name is Carol Hager. I live at 86 Essex Street here in Portland. I am a longtime Portland educator, currently at Portland Adult Education. I have 2 children who are graduates of Portland high schools, and I am a Portland taxpayer. I do not have prepared remarks. I had no intention of speaking this evening. However, I feel compelled to add to the list of folks who have been impacted by this situation many of the hourly staff that are working at Portland Adult Education who are not on any of the aforementioned contracts, who have also not been paid correctly, been overpaid, been underpaid. I want to make sure that their voices are also heard. There are very, very few full-time teachers actually at Portland Adult Education. The majority of our staff is our hourly workers, and we are serving the adults, the adult students, the parents of our pre-K 12 students at Portland Adult Education to help them move forward with their lives. And we are doing it on the backs of teachers that are being paid less than our contracted teachers. When contracted teachers are doing work outside of their contract, they're paid at a rate of $40 an hour currently. Our staff at Portland Adult Ed is paid at a much reduced rate to that. We have no ed techs. We have no special ed services. We have no ELL services. We have a committed group of people who have been impacted by this as well. So I hope that that number, and I'm not sure what it is, but I'm thinking it's upwards of 50 people, are included in our impacted staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Hi, my name is Jean Rank. I live at 98 Hamlet Ave in Portland. I'm a teacher at Rowe Elementary, and I have 3 students that attend Portland Public Schools. First, I want to thank my incredibly articulate and thoughtful colleagues, who are here tonight. I'm humbled and inspired by all of you. Thank you. I love my job and I love my students, but I'm beyond frustrated with this situation. I'm confused and hurt by the way my colleagues, my friends, and my children's teachers have been treated. In my opinion, we are far from a clear path forward. I have not reached out to you with a payroll concern because I can no longer access my pay stubs through Munis. If I could, as I used to, I wouldn't know what to look for. And frankly, I haven't had time to figure this out. Have I been paid my leadership stipend? Why does my deposit amount fluctuate occasionally? How many sick days do I have? Have I been impacted by pay averaging? Who even works in payroll? Who works in HR? Why has there been so much turnover? I have so little trust left. As a teacher, I'm concerned by the stress and anger my colleagues bring to work. I'm concerned by the number of open positions that need to be filled. I'm concerned by the impact to students and our school communities when student needs are not met. Because students who lack support act out to get the attention they need in the only way they know how. We are not prioritizing our staff, and by extension, our students are suffering. I'm here to serve students, but when you fail teachers, the harm to students is far more difficult to repair. And given this situation, how could you spend time and resources advocating for question 5? How can you stop answering questions to the Press Herald? You seem so far removed from reality. I don't know how to trust you a minute longer. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. If there is anyone else in the room that would like to do public comment, please come forward. And if you're on Zoom, please raise your hand. Go ahead. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Will Kessler. I'm here on behalf of my wife, who's an ed tech at East End Community School. I also have a 6th grader in the school system. Boy, I don't have prepared remarks. I guess make a quick analogy. Looking around, it's not a holiday sweater convention. This red is like a histamine reaction to something toxic. And when I see young faces getting up here and saying how much they like their job and how much they want to get a friend to come work for the schools, but they can't, that's a crisis of confidence. And it's just really sad to think that the narrow focus of the board discussion this morning, talking about a workshop or how do we push this button to make this right, you've lost the plot. You've lost the plot. This is a bigger picture crisis of confidence. These antibodies here are here to tell you something for a reason. And that's that this is an epic fail, as my 6th grade kid would say. Epic fail. And, when a body has an infection and has a histamine reaction, it's looking for a toxic, offensive object. And for board members to show up in the Press Herald saying every ed tech has been paid as of today is toxic. For my wife to call payroll and try and get information and to hear hostility on the other end of the phone is toxic. For bus drivers to not get paid and not feel like they have to show up to work because, hey, I'm not getting paid. And for my kid's principal to have to physically walk kids home is dangerous. And you can rearrange the chair and try to, I guess, save political face in what ways you want. But to use another 6th grade slang term, seems a little bit sus to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Jessica Kay, you're going to be up next.
Hello, Hi, my name is Jessica Kane. I'm a parent of a middle schooler and a high schooler. I live on Raymond Road. I'm just absolutely impressed and proud of the staff I hear speaking out tonight. As a parent, I cannot sit by quietly and not comment in support of them. The talent, passion, and professionalism on display tonight is what's really at risk here. We are absolutely lucky to have these professionals in our system, and great harm has been done. They are the heart of our schools, the heart of our district, and we need to find a way to resolve the issues that they're feeling that are impacting them in their ability to take care of their families, the way that they're taking care of ours. So I just, from the parent perspective, really need to see a resolution quickly. And I also need to see some accountability on the part of the board and the administration, because this has gone on far too long. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Are there any other people? Yeah, come forward.
Hi, good evening. My name is Elizabeth Capone Newton. I live at 88 Tucker Ave. I come before you tonight as a human being, a imperfect, flawed person, just like you and all of your students and staff. I want to talk about responsibility and accountability and what it means with this situation. I agree with the parent who just spoke, who said, what's at stake here is your staff. I think it's even more. It's the quality of your schools and the ability of your schools, our schools, to function. It's all the good things that happen all the time in your schools, our schools, every day. That's what's at risk. It would be convenient to say that the problems are specific to individuals. And while I think it's important for there to be accountability among leadership and elected officials, I think there is a culture of many people elected to this board currently and past, a culture of the organizations that support you, a culture of many people employed at central office and leaders in your district buildings, in your school buildings. This culture is not unique to you at all. We see it in many places. And it's a culture of, hey, we're on the same team, we're on the same side. I'm not going to publicly criticize you. I'm not going to hold you accountable. I'll give you an example, the 4-school bond, all 4 schools, renovate all 4 schools. It wasn't even, this is before my time as a parent. And some of you sit here, a parent to children, a person who fought for it, And when Lyseth was allowed to go first, and then the other 3 schools received less, you accepted that. I've never heard you speak out about it publicly or criticize it. But more importantly, your advocacy organizations like Equity in Portland Schools, Portland Progressive, they did not speak out about it either. This is a culture of letting things slide if it's the people on my team or the backroom deals, whatever. This, it's destroys organizations. The reward, it would appear, for overseeing, I'm going to ask for 1 more minute. Yeah. The reward for overseeing human resources for 8 years, apparently. And I haven't heard any conversation about the person, accountability for the person who oversaw human resources for 8 years. But it appears to be that the reward was being appointed to the committee that is searching for our next leader, our next superintendent, as the community parent representative, even though they have no current child in Portland Public Schools. They are a former administrator. They've even been brought back, as I understand, as a part-time staff right now. They're literally on the payroll, or perhaps as a contractor. I don't know. It doesn't matter. 8 years in administration, overseeing your current biggest problem, and you've appointed them as the community parent rep to find your next leader. There are 100 or 1,000 examples of the culture that is undermining Portland Public Schools. But is that not such a horrible one? And you can fix that. I'm going to ask for 30 more seconds. Okay. People talk about the erosion of trust. You can't solve a problem that you're not willing to acknowledge that you have. I think that part of why we have some new school board members is because, and some changing roles, is because people are beginning to say enough is enough. Now, what's sad is all of the good parts of recognizing oppression and dealing with racism and economic disadvantage in our schools is threatened by this icky, non-democratic top-down culture that you have. And what I don't think there's trust for you to figure it out. What I do have trust in is all the people that are gathered here, the people who are listening online, and the thousands of other people who agree with us. And I look forward to us holding you accountable. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the room or online that would like to speak? Okay. I'm going to close public comment, but I would also just like to thank you all for being here tonight. I know how much juggling it takes to be here, and I'm incredibly sorry for everything that we have caused you. We failed you multiple times in our payroll, in our communication, in our response, and I'm incredibly sorry. I am stepping into board chair tonight, and my number one priority is to work with staff to try to repair the damage that we've done and to try to rebuild trust. And I mean that, but I can say these words but not do anything, and that's not enough. So I'm pledging to do things and to listen to you and to come to you and to listen some more. So thank you again all for being here tonight, and we'll be in communication soon. We're now scheduled to go into a workshop on the superintendent search firm process. I'm going to ask that we take a 7-minute break and come back at 8 o'clock. Now I would like to, actually, Board Member Figdor, you're going to be sharing your screen. And we're going to do an update on the committee. Board Member Figdor and I co-chair that committee. And so we're going to go over the process to date. And as a reminder, we'll be voting on this recommendation later in the meeting. Beautiful. And I just need to get my screen a little bit bigger. I'm going to start talking about the process up to this point, and then Board Member Figdor will talk about the firm that we are recommending to be voted on tonight. Next slide, please. This committee has been working together for the last couple of months, and we're going to present a recommendation for the board tonight. Next slide, please. So the search committee, the superintendent search committee, was established by a board resolution earlier this year. The committee is made of 13 members, 8 of which are community members and 5 are board members. I will say that there is overlap in the roles that some of these folks play. Some are parents who are also board members and community members. Oh, can you go back, please? Thank you. As I mentioned before, I'm co-chairing this committee with Board Member Figdor, and there are 5 board members who are listed on this slide who are also on the committee and in all of the meetings. Next slide, please. This is the list of the community members. We selected these through a blind rubric process to get to these folks. Next slide. So once we had our committee selected, this is how we have moved through the process so far. So initially, we completed a legal and bias training by our HR experts here in the district. We then, as a committee, created an evaluation rubric and reviewed 6 search firm proposals in response to the RFP that we put out. We decided of those 6 to interview 3 of those firms: the Alma Advisory Group, Human Capital Enterprises, and Hazard Young Atia and Associates. The committee created interview questions and an interview evaluation rubric. And then we held 3 50-minute Zoom interviews on November 21st and 22nd to talk with each of those firms. The consensus after all of those interviews and the evaluation process was to, and it was 100% consensus to recommend a contract with Alma Advisory Group. And I'm going to turn it over to Board Member Figdor to talk more about the strengths and everything that Alma Advisory Group we think will bring to our search.
Thank you so much, Board Member Lentz. So Alma Advisory is is led by a woman in color. It's a non-traditional firm focused on organizational capacity building and equity and diversity in hiring. The CEO, Monica Rosen, would lead our search. And Alma has in the past few years done superintendent searches for these districts. So Cincinnati Public Schools, Denver Public Schools, and Eugene, the Eugene School District 4J. I will say that I was able to speak to the board chairs in each of these districts, and I heard the same thing again and again, which is they deserved a gold star, which was what I heard from the Cincinnati school board chair. In all cases, I just heard rave reviews of their work. I wanted to talk through the key strengths that we saw as a search committee. First, they are very mission aligned with our work. They are focused on competency-based screening tools to help mitigate bias and stay grounded in the actual skills we're looking for, rather than, for instance, connecting with a candidate over some shared life experience or, that we like the same sports team or what have you, but staying focused on the core skills that we're looking for. They're very focused on community and stakeholder engagement and throughout the process, and engaging people in authentic ways, including engaging people in the community who don't typically come to meetings, seeking them out, engaging them in their own languages. And this, for me, was a really core strength and really stood out a lot. They are very skilled facilitators. And then they also, one thing that our search committee wanted to ensure is that to the extent that we have internal candidates who are interested in the position, we want to ensure that they are truly supported. And Alma spoke about this in a way that was recognizing and valuing the opportunity, and seeing it as a huge win when there are internal candidates that are part of the process, and thinking about how to fully support them. So there's a couple slides with their work plan. This is the first. So it starts with a stakeholder engagement process where we're looking at the priorities for the district as well as key competencies for the role. And this is anticipated to happen in January. There's a role clarification and job description. So this is taking our existing job description and essentially updating it, including with what is learned through that stakeholder engagement. There's a designing the screening process. So working to determine how we're going to go about initially screening candidates. So all of that would happen in January. The recruitment strategy and execution would occur in February. Monitoring of the incoming talent pool and the screening of top candidates would occur February through March. They would do background checks, and we would do finalist interviews in April and May. And then finally, we end with a knowledge transfer. So as I said initially, Alma is very focused on capacity building. So there's a lot of work to transfer the knowledge that's learned through the process to ensure that we are not only ending up with a new superintendent who's the right fit for our community, but also that we're learning through the process. So the cost is $48,000. That does not include some additional expenses that we would agree on ahead of time, such as posting and advertising the position or travel for Alma or the finalist candidates. And then you can see here the primary contacts that we would work with, Monica Rosen and Sylvia Flowers. These are the two leads on the searches, I believe, in all three other instances of the districts that I mentioned, Eugene, Cincinnati, and Denver. But there would be a total of 4 Alma team members who would work with us, which was more for sure than the other firms that we talked with. And that is the end of our presentation. So we'd be happy to, I'm going to stop sharing, and then we'd be happy to take questions. And I was just trying to look to, certainly we have members of the Superintendent Search Committee on the board here. I also see a few members of the Superintendent Search Committee on Zoom. So if they're, maybe if it would be okay. Anyway, I'm going to hand it back to you, but just to, if there might be an opportunity, perhaps we can provide an opportunity for members of the search committee to add anything.
Yeah, yes. Yes, if there's anybody in the room who's on that committee or on Zoom, if you'd like to raise your hand, I'm happy to call on you and you can add your perspective of anything that was missed. Okay, I see no hands. What questions does the board have? Yes, Board Member Bryden.
Thank you, Chair. So the last slide indicated that the cost would be $48,000 to be paid out of the board contingency fund. I'm curious what is the total in the board contingency fund? What would we be left with after taking out the $48,000?
Hold on one second. The person that has the information, did you hear the full question, Superintendent?
It's roughly $85,000, I believe, is in the contingency fund. I don't remember the exact number, but Emily asked for that a while back, and that's what I recall.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Yes, Board Member Opperman.
Thank you, Chair. On the community members and stakeholders after today's conversations and presentations, does the community include teachers and staff? I didn't see that specifically listed.
Could we pull the list back up of the?
I may have missed it.
I didn't list the stakeholders, my apologies, but by all means, our staff are absolutely stakeholders.
It just said community, and I didn't know if that was including the school.
Yes, and Board Member Opperman, I'm happy to follow up with the full list that shows where they fall into the categories. But we did really tried to make sure we had as many representations across the community as we possibly could.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about the members of the search committee?
No, I was talking when the Alma was going out and seeking more information and more interaction with the community. How big was that community? What were the parts of that community? This question.
Yes. So they really go wide and deep. They do both, kind of like big scale asking and small focus groups that are focused on specific constituents that we will help identify for them. So they don't come in with a plan. We tell them who they should be talking to.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chair.
Yeah. Any other questions? Seeing no questions, I'm going to move us on to the report of the chair. That is me. So I just wanted to start by reiterating how grateful I was that everybody came to speak tonight. And I'm also extremely grateful for Carrie and Jen for organizing and mobilizing and supporting our staff over these last few weeks. I recognize that we would be in even worse shape without them. And for all of our site coordinators and the people that are doing the extra time and the extra work, I'm just so appreciative. Thank you. And I'm sorry. I said my apology before, but I'll say it again. We have failed you, and it's my number one order of business to try to make that better. And now to the nuts and bolts, the nitty gritty that will keep us moving in that direction. So I have a couple of board committee updates that I would like to go over with folks. So we have the Curriculum and Policy Committee with staff leads, the Assistant Superintendents Nally and Townsend. The chair of that committee is Board Member Russell Better, and the board members will be Board Member Bondo, Opperman, Biliou, Grant, and Lentz. On our Finance, Personnel, and Operations Committee, our staff lead is Javier Botana, our superintendent, and our chair is going to be Board Member Figdor, and board members on that committee are Board Members Opperman, Biliou, Bryden, and Grant. Our Public Affairs Committee with staff lead Grace Venezuela is chaired by Board Member Bondo, and the board members on that committee are Board Member Russell Better, Bryden, Lentz, and Youssef. I would ask that all committee chairs after this meeting work with their staff leads and revisit meeting times with their current members to find times that are suitable for both board members and staff. New meeting times, if needed, should start in January. I would also like to let the board and the public know that Board Member Russell Better is going to be taking on the role of Student Representative Liaison. She's reached out to many of you already, but as you're probably feeling right now, these board meetings are all over the place and there's lots of rules and hidden things. So Board Member Russell Better will be kind of your point of contact to help you get better oriented about what to expect and how to be more engaged. So thank you, Board Member Russell Better, for doing that. I'm now going to turn it over to the superintendent for your remarks.
Yeah, I have a very short report other than what I said earlier about the payroll situation, just to let you know that we are continuing the work in response to the board resolution around high school alignment. Last night, we hosted the formal launch of the high school preference process. Families had the opportunity to understand the process and learn about the 4 high schools in Portland. The preference form for all 3 comprehensive high schools became available last month, and the timeline for expressing preferences during the month of January. So we're providing an opportunity for prospective families to visit each school in the next few weeks. And that's really all I have.
Thank you, Superintendent. Now we're going to move on to the report of the Secretary, the consideration and action to approve the minutes of November 15th, 2022. Is there a motion to consider is there a motion to approve the minutes of November 15th, 2022? Board Member Russell Bitter, is there a second? Board Member Bryden, are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, I will move to public comment. Any public comment on the meeting minutes from November 15th, 2022? Close public comment. That's my note to myself when there are no people. Whew. This will get better, I promise. Is there any board discussion? All right, seeing none, by roll call vote, please indicate whether you are in favor of approving the meeting minutes of November 15th, 2022. Mr. Superintendent, will you please call the roll?
Yeah, and before I do, just for Caden and Joe, have you talked to them about?
I was just saying, tell them they can abstain.
Yeah,
Yes.
you feel free to abstain since you were not a part of the, you don't have to if you read them and watched the video and feel like. Yeah, so feel free to abstain. Ms. Bondo?
Yes.
Dr. Opperman?
Abstain.
I guess I should have included you in that.
I know. I agree with you.
Ms. Russell Better?
Yes.
Ms. Billiou?
Yes.
Ms. Bryden?
Yes.
Mr. Youssef?
Yes.
Ms. Lentz?
Yes.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Ms. Ellis?
Abstain.
Mr. Hemond?
Abstain.
And Ms. Figdor?
Yes.
The motion passes with Board Member Opperman abstaining and student representatives also abstaining, Student Representatives Ellis and Hemond abstaining. And now would like to move us to consent items, acknowledgement of donations made to the school district. Mr. Superintendent, will you please speak to this item?
As Chair, under board policy KCD, the school board accepts by unanimous consent contributions made to the school district is required by that policy. All of the donations are listed in the board agenda under this item. And our practice is for each donor to receive a written contribution acknowledgement expressing our heartfelt gratitude as well as for their tax purposes. I would like to thank the generous contributors of the Portland Public Schools who have made donations of durable goods, goods of substantial value and historical or commemorative significance, including for the Gerald E. Talbot Elementary School, which received the following donations: dinner for 100 families as part of their homework diner event from Wayside Food Program of Portland, mittens, hats, and slippers from Mrs. Panagakos of Portland, and books for the school library from Mr. Talbot himself of Portland. The district also received funding from the Rotary Club to procure 170 sets of boots for students in need, and Ocean Avenue Elementary School received a donation to be used for students in the Breathe program from Generac of Waukesha, Wisconsin.
Oh, thank you for that.
As always, thank you to the many contributors for their generosity and support. So.
Thank you. And as I mentioned before, we are going to delay the board focus on the update of the status of implementing middle school supports. And we're going to move into old business. We have one order for old business, which is the consideration and action to approve the superintendent's proposed fiscal year 24 capital improvement plan. Is there a motion? Board Member Opperman, is there a second? Board Member Grant. Mr. Superintendent, will you please speak to the motion?
Yes, Chair. So we had a workshop on this at the previous meeting. We're asking for approval of our request to submit a capital improvement plan request to the city manager for their consideration before advancing it to the city council. We're asking for $2.4 million. The bulk of that $2 million is to support the replacement of major portions of the roof at Portland High School. We currently have a $250,000 project that is going out to bid this month, and we hope to have completed in January, so that it can then go to construction this spring. And that is for the engineering to do this full project, plus some structural repairs that are needed immediately. But the $2 million will allow us to replace major portions of the roof at Portland High School. We also have request for replacement of buses on our fleet, and that's the remainder of the request. You may recall from the workshop that we had a significant additional number of projects that were slated for CIP that we have postponed into future years. This is, sort of our ongoing practice around this. In the board packet materials, you do have the scoring of those projects done by staff as a way for you to understand the different projects that have been postponed. You also have in the packet the updated 6-year CIP, which includes all those projects that have been rolled into next year and all the way out to the 6th year, which is everything else basically that we envision needing. You also have in the packet the existing roughly $8 million worth of projects. It's labeled the CIP action plan. Those are projects that are currently funded and have not yet been executed on. So they're at different levels of planning and bidding. Some bid that didn't get replies and things along those lines. But we have a significant backlog of projects. And I think that's one of the main reasons that we decided to go with, a fairly contained agenda for this year. Something that is desperately needed, that we absolutely needed to have in there regardless, but not adding other projects that we just don't have the capacity to complete. So I'll be happy to take any questions that you have. And I believe that our facilities manager, Steve Stilfen, is, I don't see Steve, but I do see Assistant Facilities Director Tamara Sweeney on the screen, and she'll also help to answer any questions that I can't.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the motion? Yes, Board Member Figdor.
Mr. Superintendent, can you remind us the report that was done, I believe, in 2017 by Tyler Technologies in terms of our big picture facility costs? Can you remind me of the total?
Yeah, in 2017, it was $327 million over 20 years. And I do see that Steve joined us now. So that was in, 2017 dollars. We don't have an update on that, but you can pretty much be assured that it's significantly more than that. The buildings for our future projects took about 50 million of that off of the total sort of projected cost. And, you know, obviously since then, we've had additional things that have come onto that.
And the timeline for those the timeline for the needs was over 20 years. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the motion? Yes.
Is it appropriate to ask a question about the bus? When I realize, I know that the buses are being replaced because they just don't work and are suited for this environment. And I just didn't know if we would be having other ones like that coming up. How many of that kind of bus do we have? Couldn't figure this.
I believe it's in your packet. There is.
Couldn't figure that out. That's why I'm asking.
There is a fleet replacement plan is in your packet. So that shows you when buses are due for replacement. We are replacing a number of buses that are not eligible for state funding at this point because they haven't, realized the years and miles combined that are necessary to be eligible for that. So we're replacing them using CIP. We also have a number of buses that we are going to move forward for that do meet the eligibility that we are applying for state funding to replace. But that fleet replacement plan shows you, when it basically lists all of our buses and, how many miles they have, when they were purchased and so on. And so that's the master plan.
So a red line means they're on anything particular? Is this?
I don't know. I have to look at
I'm not a transportation expert. So C bus and D bus are things that I have no idea about.
That's the type of bus that they are. So I don't actually know what.
Okay, I just didn't know which ones were the bad ones and which ones were the good ones. And
I don't think that the C or the D is a grading. I think that is the type of a bus, and I actually should know that and don't off the top of my head.
That's fine.
But it probably has to do with the. No, it doesn't have to do with the fuel. I don't know.
Probably the number of kids can put in it or something, maybe. But thank you.
Any other questions on the motion? Oh, yes. Board Member Bondo.
Do we know the timeline for the replacement of the roof of the Portland High School?
Well, so right now we have the engineering back. So that is a critical next step in it. It's going to depend on, so we're going to bid for the structural repairs in January, Steve, or in December?
We should have the request for proposal by the end of this month and on the street in January to solicit contractors.
And so we're soliciting contractors to do the structural repairs. If we get the funding from the city, when would we be able to go to bid for the remainder, for the $2 million aspect of the project?
I would say late summer.
So probably for completion in the fall and then 2024.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I look at the roof of that school. So I look at about the safety measure. I mean, what they're going to do, the replacement, those constructions nothing's going to impact the operation aspect of the school. I mean, where the students are, because there's a different level, right? We have a floors. Just want to make sure that we're paying attention to any safety measure during those construction.
Yeah, I mean, it would obviously be a major consideration for the contractor since it's although hopefully some of the work could be done over the summer and during breaks, but they are capable of doing that while the building is occupied.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'd like to open any public comment on the motion. All right, seeing none, I will close public comment. Any board discussion? Seeing none. Yes, Board Member Figdor.
As I have in past years, I'm going to vote against this motion. I understand the backlog. I understand the capacity limits. I understand why this is the proposal before us. And I did support it at the committee level. But when it comes to the bottom line, in 2017, we invested in a comprehensive analysis that told us we had to invest an average of $16 million per year in our school buildings just to keep them up. That's not to meet 21st century educational standards. That's just to address the maintenance and operations of and upkeep, of our buildings. So 2.4 million is not enough by any stretch of the imagination in order to meet the needs of our facilities. So I will be voting against this tonight, though I do understand the thinking behind it.
Any other discussion? Then by roll call vote, please indicate whether you are in favor of the action to approve the superintendent's proposed fiscal year 24 CIP or capital improvement plan. Mr. Superintendent, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair. Ms. Bondo?
Yes.
Dr. Opperman?
Yes.
Ms. Russell Better?
Yes.
Ms. Biliu?
Yes.
Ms. Bryden?
Yes.
Mr. Youssef?
Yes.
Ms. Lentz?
Yes.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Ms. Ellis?
Yes.
Mr. Hemond?
Yes.
And Ms. Figdor?
No.
The motion passes with Board Member Figdor opposed and the students voting with the majority.
I missed the motion.
Oh, it didn't second it, did it? How did I miss that? What should we do?
No, we did.
I thought we did.
She's
Okay, I just missed
it.
it.
And I
First, second.
Yeah, you said
I just
first
assumed I
and
missed it.
second. Yeah.
Yeah, Opperman was first, Grant was seconded.
Our team here.
Thank you. Now I'm going to move us into new business for consideration and action to approve a contract with the Alma Advisory Group to conduct the superintendent search. I will note that this is new business, but we are voting on it. We'll only have one read for these two considerations. So is there a motion to approve a contract with the Alma Advisory Group to conduct the superintendent search? Board Member Figdor, motion, second with Board Member Bryden. Should you speak to that? No.
I have nothing to say.
Okay, beautiful. Does anyone else want to
We held a workshop on it.
Okay.
If it's helpful, I can just reiterate. What's before us is a contract for $48,000 plus additional expenses for advertising the position and travel for both Alma's team and finalist candidates. This comes from a unanimous recommendation from the Superintendent Search Advisory Committee based on a rigorous process where we used evaluation tools and standardized questions to ensure that we were limiting bias and that we were evaluating the firms based on core competencies.
Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, let me check. Yeah, I'm going to open it up to public comment.
Hi, good evening again. Elizabeth Capone Newton at 88 Tucker Ave. I was hoping that one of you would be so gracious as to let the public know how many firms you considered and if any of them were in Boston or New York, where ostensibly the travel expenses would be less. 48,000 doesn't sound like a huge amount of money, but I know the travel expenses are on top of it, and would just love to have the public have some information about how many firms were considered and whether any of them were located closer to home. Thank you.
Can I respond to that? Great. Yeah, so we interviewed we had 6 firms respond to the RFP. We interviewed 3 of those firms. With the way that these firms work is their consultants are everywhere, mostly remote. And so the location of the firm doesn't necessarily reflect where the consultants are coming from. There was one firm that we interviewed that did have consultants. Part of their team would have been closer, but part of their team was still very far away. So it didn't feel like a factor that we could equally consider, especially because Alma was just so far in front in terms of their commitment to equity, their alignment with our values, and the way that they would approach the search. Any other public comment? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. Any board discussion?
I just want to.
Sorry, Nyla.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Am I going? Okay. I just want to voice that this was a really great experience to be a part of. We had a lot of very well-rounded folks be a part of this search committee and still are. It was a really good opportunity for me as somebody that's never really been in a higher level hiring committee, just to see what the process is and how are obviously these very complicated folks found and resourced. To specifically speak on Alma, I think they're exactly what this school, Portland Public School needs. They're innovative. They're very forward thinking in their equity, just their understanding of equity, their understanding of racial structure, white supremacist structures, their understanding of school districts and the needs for a very specific person that has the capacity to understand very complex issues. And that was shown in our interview process. It was shown in the conversations we had with them. It was shown in the ways they engage with us, whether it was on paper or it was interpersonal. And I know there's a lot of, mistrust with this board and mistrust with leadership, but that is also not to stunt the process that it was many community members. It was people that put in long hours, and it's something that we're all working to try to get, a great outcome for all of us. And I think it's something that we should all be happy for, or not happy, not pinning any emotions on anybody, but I think it's something that we should be excited for. And given where we're at, I think it's a good place for us to start new and to try to see, what are our options. Thank you. And I just wanted to say something.
Thank you, Board Member Biela. Any other? Yeah, Board Member Figdor.
I think Ms. Bilyeu said it very well. I just want to add thanks to everyone the search committee members who have been involved in this process, and just reflecting on the contributions that individual committee members have made. It's been a really strong collaborative process. And as Ms. Bilyeu, I believe, referenced, there's a majority of community members on the committee. I've just been so appreciating the experience and perspective and wisdom that the different members are bringing to the committee. So I just want to express my gratitude, and I'm really excited about Alma. I think they're going to add a lot, and we're going to learn from them. And I feel very confident about the process in terms of being very community centered. And when I say community, I mean all stakeholders in Portland. And so that makes me optimistic. And so I want to, again, just thank everyone who's been involved. I thank the board for considering this recommendation, and I look forward to the vote.
Thank you, Board Member Figdor. I'm going to move us to the vote, seeing no other discussion hands. So by roll call vote, please indicate whether you are in favor of an action to approve the contract with the Alma Advisory Group to conduct the superintendent search. Mr. Superintendent, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair. Ms. Bondo,
Yes.
Dr. Opperman,
Yes.
Ms. Russell Better,
Yes.
Ms. Biliou,
Yes.
Ms. Bryden,
Yes.
Mr. Youssef,
Yes.
Ms. Lentz,
Yes.
Mr. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Hemond,
Yes.
and Ms. Figdor.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously with the students voting with the majority. I'm going to move us to now the consideration and action to approve a memorandum of understanding with the base CBU for bus driver incentives. Is there a motion? Board Member Figdor, is there a second? Board Member Russell Butter. Mr. Superintendent, will you please speak to the motion?
Yes, Chair. We're asking the board to approve a renewal of the memorandum of understanding that we established last year with the Benefit Association of School Employees base. As you know, that is our transportation, food service, facilities, as well as school secretaries and central office technicians. This particular MOU addresses urgent staff shortages in our transportation department. It was originally approved last year at about this time. It was discontinued at the beginning of this year. It was a one-year agreement, and we discontinued it because we thought that our staffing was set. Subsequently, we have experienced departures and leaves, which have forced the district to begin canceling bus trips on some days. The MOU, what it does is it includes a $3,000 hiring bonus for new staff who join us and stay with us through the end of the school year. And it also provides a retention bonus for our fully licensed drivers who stay with us this year and meet certain attendance requirements. So that's all stipulated and outlined in the in the MOU itself. It also includes a $1,000 referral bonus for employees who refer a fully licensed bus driver that is ultimately hired. And it also includes the creation of a list of PPS employees who are willing to serve as bus assistants on an on-call basis. And so that's what we're asking you to do at this meeting.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, I'm gonna, oh, yes. Sorry. Board Member Bondo.
I just want to make sure it's really a question. So going back, really what's going on right now with the payroll issues. I just wonder what the previous one, did we have any issues or applying those bonus to our drivers through the payroll issues or anything? Everything went okay because I didn't have anything.
Not to my knowledge.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure. Because when we agree today, if we vote today with the payroll issues, so just we adding some more issues on the top what we have, or we going to have some more? Nobody's
getting this bonus until the end of the school year.
Okay.
Because there are, part of this is you've got to stay with us for the year.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Biliou.
I'm wondering, what are your advertising methods, and are they going to be different than how you regularly advertise these jobs?
I don't know what they are, but I am open to, we've tried everything. Again, we were successful last year at fully staffing for the start of the school year, and we've subsequently lost people. I will point out that other districts established incentives like these. So some of our folks left for some of those incentives.
Okay. I think, yeah, it would just be helpful to expand where you're advertising just to get more resources that way.
Thank you, Board Member Biliou. Any other questions on the motion? Then I'm going to open public comment. Okay. Seeing none, is there any board discussion? Then by roll call vote, please indicate whether you are in favor of an action to approve a memorandum of understanding with the base CBU for bus driver incentives. Mr. Superintendent, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair, Ms. Bondo,
Yes.
Dr. Opperman,
Yes.
Ms. Russell Better,
Yes.
Ms. Billiou,
Yes.
Ms. Bryden,
Yes.
Mr. Youssef,
Yes.
Ms. Lentz,
Yes.
Mr. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Heemand,
Yes.
and Ms. Figdor.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously with the students voting with the majority. Now I'm going to move us into personnel, which is a consideration and action to approve election of teacher candidates probationary. Is there a motion? Board Member Grant, a second. Board Member Youssef. Is Chris St. Louis?
I'm doing it.
Okay, you're doing it? Okay, then take it away.
Yep. So we are asking you to approve one probationary teacher. This is in the budget, and it is the salary that's shown is prorated, will be prorated to the start of the to their start, as opposed to that's what their full salary would be.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, there's no public comment on personnel items. Is there any board discussion? Seeing none, then by roll call vote, please indicate whether you are in favor of these personnel items. Mr. Superintendent, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair, Ms. Bondo,
Yes.
Dr. Opperman,
Yes.
Ms. Russell Better,
Yes.
Ms. Billiou,
Yes.
Ms. Bryden,
Yes.
Mr. Youssef,
Yes.
Ms. Lentz,
Yes.
Mr. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Heemand,
Yes.
and Ms. Figdor.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously with the students voting with the majority. I'd now like to move us into adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn the business meeting? Board Member Opperman, is there a second?
Sorry, I have a question.
Oh, okay.
When are we going to, I know the middle school implementation was moved, or do we know when that's going to be?
Yeah, we are going to look at the schedule probably on Thursday and figure out a different date. So as soon as we know that date, we'll communicate that out.
And in
Okay.
all likelihood, we'll move this to the next meeting, which is on the 20th.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Was there a second? Did we get to a second? Yes. Board Member Bondo, all those in favor? Okay, we are adjourned at 8:50 p.m.